Now listen you guys, if you really want to become a better player, you desperately need to learn how to beat the Sicilian defense. Arguably the greatest defense to one e4. I know this is something that might seem to be boring to some of you guys, especially beginners and intermediate level players, but to make it even more interesting, I'm just gonna show you some of the deadly traps that you can try out against your Sicilian opponents. Now once again, the traps that I'm about to show you guys are somehow new on YouTube, well at least to me, because I haven't seen anyone covering these before the creation of this video. And so let's get started. So in the last video that I made about how to beat the Sicilian defense in less than 8 moves, the main area of my meat was the Alapin variation with pawn to c3, and I told you the main idea of pawn to c3 is to go d4 later on, which is why most Sicilian players are playing pawn to d5 nowadays, the so-called anti-Alapin variation. Of course, the main move is pawn takes d5, but I recommended the move knight to f3, simply allowing black to take our e-pawn. We saw what happens after black plays knight to f6, trying to hold on to his pawn. I said go pawn to d3, cause they'll take, that's the top played move again. And after bishop takes d3, pawn to h6 is another top played move which almost everyone plays in an effort to drive this knight away from their territory. And it was here where I said we should employ the Tennyson gambit ideas by sacrificing our knight on f7, double attacking the queen on d8 and the rook on h8. If king takes, yeah, we have 2 possible moves, either bishop g6 which directly wins the queen, or bishop c4, e.g. bishop g6 check and the king cannot go back, so black has to take, and then that's how we win the free queen on d8. This is not what we are looking at in this video, ladies and gentlemen. We are covering some more advanced traps, and so I suggest that you keep on watching this video up to the end so that you don't miss any interesting part. Alright, so in today's video, we are still looking at the ways in which we can take down black's so-called best defense to one e4. So they play the Sicilian defense and then we go pawn to c3. Now, if I show you the Masters database, here you will see that knight to f6 is the top played move. And this is in the Masters database. Then followed by pawn to d5, we already covered that in the video which is already in the card above. And so we're going to cover knight to f6 in today's video, and also what to do against knight to c6, which happens to be the top played move in the Lichess database, as you can see right here. Once again, you can see pawn to d5 is the second most played move even in the Lichess database, so feel free to watch that video which is in the card above after you finish watching this one. So let's begin with knight to f6 first. So knight to f6 simply attacks our pawn on e4. Here I just recommend you go pawn to d3 right away. This move is like the second most played move in the Masters database. Still playable, and from here you can see black responding with either pawn to d5, d6 or knight c6. g6 is also a possibility, but we are not going to cover this move in this short presentation. So with d3 you're going to see the move pawn to d5, for example. Now the top theoretical move here, which is also played by masters, is knight d2, simply playing in the style of the Kaya, the King's Indian attack, or you can simply go pawn to e5, which may somehow transpose the game into the French defense kind of position. But you know how crazy Casper is. He will tell you to go knight to f3. Yep, still trying to take our opponent back into the Tennyson gambit ideas. Let's say if they take on e4, which is the top played move by the way. Now you can go knight g5 once again, attacking the e4 pawn. And as you can see, it takes d3 is by far the top played move according to the Lichess database, and this is where you simply take on d3 once again with your bishop, and just like in the previous line which I showed you in the introduction of this video, they will always go pawn to h6, the top played move, trying to get rid of our knight. But once again we just sacrifice our knight on f7, double attacking 2 of black's pieces, and this time if black chooses not to take with the king but to go queen d5, well, we have this move, knight takes h8, Because if they take our free pawn on g2, we can safely win the queen by playing bishop g6 check. Our queen is doing a great job of covering this file. So the only move is for black to give up his queen, and from here we should go on to win. And that's how we can easily transpose the game back into the Tennyson Gambit ideas. Let's look at other possible lines. So back to this position, still looking at the knight to f6 line. I said just go pawn to d3, and after pawn to d5, instead of playing knight d2 or pawn to e5, you can also try Kaspar's crazy move knight to f3, and obviously black is going to take, after which you go knight g5. But we saw in the previous line what happens after e takes d3, which happens to be the top plate move. If pawn to h6 right in this position instead of e takes d3, we will still have a decisive game. For example, h6, we just simply grab the pawn on e4, and after knight takes, Stockfish favors white here with a slight advantage of plus 0.6 after playing d takes e4. But if you still want to keep your queens on the board, you can still go queen a4 check. And again, I covered this line in the previous video, so I'm not gonna say much about this. Now, in the knight to f6 line, after we play pawn to d3 and black plays pawn to d5 followed by knight to f3, you won't always see black taking on e4. Sometimes they can play moves such as pawn to e6 here, kind of a waiting move. Again, if you want, you can simply go pawn to e5, which may transpose the game into the French. But after this move, I like bishop e3. Wait a second. Bishop e3 is a sneaky move, which is aimed at setting a nasty trap, which I'm going to show you soon. First of all, both knight g4 and pawn to d5 by black, in an effort to try and get rid of our dark squared bishop, can't help as they will just make black's position to be worse. E.g., if knight g4, now the position is about equal, if not white having a slight advantage because of being up a tempo. Let me show you. We just go bishop g5 here, attacking the queen. If bishop e7, we trade off our dark squared bishops, queen takes e7, then bishop e2. Do you know our main strength in this position? It is these two pawns right here, not even our e4 pawn. These pawns are doing a great job to guard these highlighted squares. So we are playing this in the style of the Gioco Pianissimo in the Italian game. That's why knight g4 is not a good option for black. Therefore, even in this position, after bishop e3, once again d takes e4 is by far the most played move, after which we play knight g5 once again. If h6 will simply take back the knight, and you know what happens after knight takes e4, we still go queen a4 check, and we're going to win the knight on e4. But e takes d3 is again the top played move. What do? We simply take back on d3 with our bishop. After pawn to h6, I'm sure you can now see why we played bishop e3 on move number 5 to support this continuation. Watch. Knight takes f7 once again. If king takes f7, we simply go bishop g6 in an effort to win this free queen on d8. Well, black may laugh at you and say, well, at least I have king e7, that's why he pushed pawn to e6 in the opening stage. But thanks to this bishop, which we played on move number 5, our sneaky bishop, because now it is made in two after bishop takes c5 check. There is nothing that black can do apart from donating his queen, and that's how we made black on d6. And you know what, guys? It only takes less than 2 seconds to hit the like button right there on your screen if at all you are enjoying this video. That's how we support each other. If you're already my subscriber, you can do well by sharing this video so that we grow this community together. And if you haven't subscribed already, please, I ask that you do, because that's how you encourage me to keep on making these wonderful videos just for you guys, and like paying me or something. Not to mention that if you want to take your chess seriously beyond tricks and traps, you can check out my courses by clicking on the link in the description down below for my website, where you'll be able to purchase them at very affordable prices. Alright, back to this position where we saw that knight g4 is not a good move. I said here you will always see your opponents taking on e4 once again, and then you go knight g4, then d takes e3, you play bishop takes on d3, instead of pawn to h6, allowing us to sacrifice our knight on f7, you may see black playing a more solid move, bishop e7. Well, after bishop e7, you still play this in the normal Tennyson gambit way. Let me show you. You just go queen e2. If pawn to h6 this time, well, you can't sacrifice your knight on f7 because now the queen is defended by the bishop and there is no queen on d1. So you simply go knight e4, trading off your knights. And trust me, even in this position, Stockfish thinks the position is equal. If f5, we always have queen h5 check. So you're going to see black castling short anyways. And then we play knight a3. In most of these lines, we are going to be developing our queen's knight onto the a3 square. Not on d2, but on a3. This will also prepare to castle long in the long run. Let me show you. After something like pawn to a5, we can simply play bishop d3. They may play knight c6 with just castle long. Definitely, I would love to have white pieces in this position because of the kingside pawn storm that is coming very soon, and we are ready to sacrifice our bishop on f5 anytime soon if black doesn't move his queen away. Alright. Back to our Alapin initial position. After black plays knight to f6 instead of knight c6, we still go pawn to d3, and after d5 once again play the Casper move knight to f3, and we just finished covering the d takes e4 line and the pawn to e6 line. Now we come to the knight to c6 line. So if black plays knight c6 in this position, just know that this time there is no possibility of capturing the free queen on d8, since this queen is now defended by the knight on c6. Hence, we need to be flexible enough to switch to other plans, but luckily, Stockfish says we still have a decisive advantage if only we can play pawn to e5 in this position. So just remember this: after knight to c6, go pawn to e5 given a move. The top continuation here is knight d7, after which you go pawn to d4. You play this in the French defense style. If queen b6, that's what French players play, you simply take on c5. So now, instead of an early queen to b6, which most French players play, where we take on c5 right away, black may also play pawn to e6. Well, after pawn to e6, I suggest you just simply play normal moves. Bishop d3, pawn to c4 is not good. They will always play queen b6. From here, if you want to continue playing in the normal style of the French defense, you can simply play bishop c2 to give enough protection to the pawn on d4, at least with your queen and the knight. But there is another gambit in the French defense which I'm going to show you in another video, where we actually sacrifice this pawn on e5 and still claim a decisive advantage. Let me show you briefly. So instead of bishop c2, you just simply castle short and you are safe. Black may think they will win some material after c takes d4, pawn takes, knight takes, and then queen takes. Since we don't have bishop b5 check, which would be a discovery on the black queen. Well, here I simply suggest you go knight to c3, completely sacrificing your pawn on e5. The idea is that if queen takes, which happens to be the top played move, you go rook e1 attacking the queen. And if queen d6, you can simply go knight b5, putting more pressure on the queen, and you continue playing chess. If queen d4, for example, the right continuation is knight b5 attacking the queen, followed by bishop f4 with some ideas of supporting knight c7 check, which would also fork the king and the rook. But instead of knight b5, you can still play a Casper move, rook takes e6 check, simply sacrificing your rook. The idea is that if f takes e6, now you can see the reason why we sacrifice the pawn on e5. Simply bishop g6 once again, and the queen is a goner. Alright, taking you through the moves one more time. e4, c5, then c3, the Alapin variation. Instead of knight to f6, if black starts with knight to c6, which is the top played move in the Lichess database, as I mentioned earlier on, well, now that you know that there's no possibility of winning black's queen on d8 for free because it is defended by the knight on c6, it's high time you switch your plans once again to the French ideas, beginning with the move pawn to d4. Well, it's not much of a stretch. if c takes d4, what else? You maintain your two center pawns. This is the Alapin variation at its best. If pawn to d5 by black, well, you can simply advance your pawn to e5, but even better is to simplify the game with e takes d5. Both French players and Sicilian players don't really like very simplified games like this, so you're going to have an easy game. Just go knight to f3 and like knight to c6, just playing solidly. e5, don't take, they will take your queen and make you lose the right to castle. So just go knight c3 attacking the queen. If they go bishop b4, play bishop d2 and pinning your knight to the queen, and also threatening to take black's queen on d5 in case of e takes d4. And so you're going to see them taking your knight, after which you don't take with your pawn, you take with your bishop. If e4, you go knight e5, knight takes, pawn takes, and you won't see advanced players taking your queen here because they will activate your rook, which was doing nothing on a1. And so they play knight e7, and that's when you go queen a4 check, bishop d7 covering the check, then you go queen a3, making it difficult for white to castle short anytime soon. You have other moves such as bishop e2 and you will castle short in no time from now. This is just the Alapin variation at its best. Alright, I think this is enough for today. I hope you guys enjoyed my video. If at all you did, don't hesitate to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, because that's how you encourage me to keep on doing these wonderful works just for you guys. As you noticed in this video, in the knight to f6 line, I only covered the move pawn to d5 and some transpositions to do with knight to c6 and e6. But in the next Alapin video, I'll cover the move pawn to d6, what to do if your opponent plays pawn to d6. And so you have all the reasons to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss my future uploads concerning these traps. Alright, thank you for watching my video. Until next time.